You ever notice how some people don't just disagree with Graham Hancock, but they actually despise him? Not just debate him, not just offer counter evidence, but they go out of their way to completely insult the guy. I'm talking full on character assassination, calling him a pseudo intellectual, a grifter, and even comparing him to flat earthers. And yeah, I'm looking at you, Professor Dave. First off, let's be real, this guy's not even a professor, that's just his branding, and if you've seen any of his videos, you know what I mean. They're loaded with mockery, sarcasm, and personal jabs. It's not about having a respectful debate, it's about making himself look smart and anyone who disagrees look stupid. I mean, seriously, go look at the comment sections on any one of his debunking videos. Anytime someone challenges him, even politely, he responds with this weird, condescending aggression. It's like if you don't fall in line 100% with his worldview, he treats you like an idiot. And it's honestly the furthest thing from education, it's just all ego. And that's part of the problem. Guys like Hancock come along and they say, hey, there's some really strange things in this historical record that don't add up. Let's look at them. And anybody who actually cares about science would say, cool, let's dig into that. But instead, it's like, shut up, you're an idiot, you're dangerous to science. And I honestly think he gets this reaction because the truth is Hancock has reach. He's on Netflix, he's on Rogan, he's reaching millions of people. People like myself who are naturally curious and not already sold on the whole mainstream timeline of history. And yeah, I get it. If you built your entire career defending that timeline, that's gotta feel threatening. I would get defensive too. But Hancock isn't pretending to be an archaeologist. He's a journalist, a storyteller, and a damn good researcher. And he's not saying, believe me, he's just saying, ask questions. The fact that this gets him smeared so aggressively tells you everything you need to know. And the truth is, if Hancock's evidence was that weak, it would collapse on its own. And I think the main issue is that he bypassed the gatekeepers, and the gatekeepers didn't like that. Because let's be real, academia is a closed loop. You need credentials, peer-reviewed papers, funding, tenure, and you better not rock the boat if you want to stay in that system. And you definitely don't go on Rogan and tell 11 million people that mainstream archaeology may be wrong about the origins of civilization. But that's exactly what Hancock did. And the irony of it all is that Hancock has always said, don't believe me, just look for yourself. He's not asking people to blindly accept his version of history. He's asking people to question the version of history that we've been told is unquestionable. And apparently that's the greatest sin of all. Because in the end, this isn't just about facts, it's about control. Who controls the narrative gets to decide what questions are valid. And when someone outside that system starts asking the right questions, the system gets defensive. Which tells me one thing. Hancock struck a nerve. That's where we're going next, into the evidence that got people so uncomfortable in the first place. So why all the outrage? Why the smear campaigns, the hit pieces from the snarky YouTubers with the fake professorships? It's not just because Graham Hancock is wrong. It's because even if he's partially right, the entire story we've been told about human history starts to crack. The mainstream model says civilization began about 6,000 years ago. Mesopotamia, Sumer, Egypt. Before that, humans were basically just wandering around, hunting, gathering, barely scraping by. But what if that story isn't complete? What if there is an earlier civilization, one that existed before the Ice Age? One that was wiped out in some massive global cataclysm? Maybe around 12,800 years ago, leaving behind scattered survivors, memories encoded in myth, and a handful of impossible structures. If that's true, it doesn't just shift the date on the timeline, it means everything we know about the evolution of civilization, our technology, religion, architecture, astronomy, mathematics, may have come from somewhere else, somewhere older. And here's the uncomfortable part for archaeologists. If any of this is true, it means that a bunch of people outside the field noticed something that the field itself completely missed or ignored. And that's why there's all the pushback, and that's why it's so emotional, so defensive. Because Hancock isn't just pointing to gaps in the data, he's pointing to gaps in the story. And he's asking the one question the establishment never wants to hear. What if we're wrong? Because if we are, if the foundations of modern archaeology are built on assumptions instead of evidence, then a lot of people with fancy titles and big grants have a lot to answer for. So instead of answering, they attack. But the evidence? That's where things get interesting. Alright, let's actually get into it now. Let's talk about why Graham Hancock's ideas resonate with so many people. It's not blind faith, it's not wishful thinking, it's because there are real, measurable, undeniable anomalies scattered all over the planet. So let's go through a few. We'll start with the Sphinx. The official story says it was built around 2500 BC for Pharaoh Khafre. But geologist Dr. Robert Schoch, again an actual geologist, not a journalist, looked at the erosion patterns on the Sphinx enclosure and said, "This isn't wind and sand, this is water." We're talking sustained, heavy rainfall, the kind that Egypt hasn't seen in over 9,000 years. Schoch's analysis places the erosion somewhere between 7,000 and 10,000 BC. That pushes the monument back thousands of years before dynastic Egypt. And Egyptology's response? Denial and ridicule. Maybe again it's because this guy went on Joe Rogan, I don't know, I'm just making a wild guess. Schoch publicly defended his position at the Geological Society of America, and guess what? Many geologists agreed with him. So this tells us that the erosion patterns are real, the dating is peer-reviewed, but the interpretation? Still denied by mainstream Egyptologists. Next we're going to talk about Göbekli Tepe. Now this one might be one of my favorite, because this one is just completely undeniable. In southeast Turkey, there's a site called Göbekli Tepe, discovered by the late Klaus Schmidt of the German Archaeological Institute. It's got massive T-shaped megaliths arranged in astronomical layouts, covered in symbolic carvings. And here's the kicker. Radiocarbon dating puts it at 9,600 BC. That's before agriculture, before cities, before pottery. So who planned it? Who engineered it? And who buried it intentionally? And yes, a lot of people think it was intentionally buried by its creators. Hancock argues this is a smoking gun. The fingerprints of a lost civilization, as he would say. The site's dating is undisputed. The debate is over what it means. And mainstream archaeology doesn't have a satisfying answer. So this is a factual site with a confirmed age, but mainstream archaeology refuses to call it a civilization. Next is the Great Pyramid. When most people think of the Great Pyramids, they think of impossible precision. This isn't just a big pile of rocks, it's one of the most precise structures on Earth. Aligned to true north within 0.05 degrees, confirmed by modern tools. The base is level within less than an inch over a 13-acre footprint. Interior shafts aligned with celestial bodies like Orion's Belt and Sirius. Some internal granite blocks weigh up to 80 tons. And we're told this is all built with copper chisels and sleds. No prototypes, no learning curve, just perfect execution on the first go. Once again, Hancock dives deep into this, asking all the right questions. These aren't wild guesses, the measurements are published in archaeological records. But the construction method? Still debated, still unexplained. So the precision is real. The means to achieve it? Still theoretical at best. Next is Baalbek. In Lebanon lies Baalbek, home to the Trilithon. 3 foundation stones weighing over 750 to 800 tons each. Engineers today would struggle to move them with modern cranes, especially given the terrain. Mainstream archaeology says Romans built this platform, but the truth? They built on top of it. The deepest base layer predates them, and no one knows who placed those stones. No texts, no quarry records, no tools found. So we have a confirmed size for the stone, but the construction method? Still debated. Next we have Puma Punku in Bolivia, sitting at over 12,000 feet above sea level. Here you'll find massive andesite blocks, some weighing over 100 tons with perfect 90-degree cuts, interlocking shapes, and what appear to be precision drill holes. And andesite is hard. You'd need diamond-tipped tools today to replicate some of these cuts. Mainstream archaeologists claim it was done with stone tools and abrasion. But show me the tools. Show me the practice runs. Show me anything that connects primitive Bronze Age technology to this kind of workmanship. And even skeptics have admitted the site is weird. They just stop short of saying it's anomalous. So the site is real, precision confirmed, but how was it made? That's still unanswered. And next, and possibly my favorite, are the global flood myths. Finally, we zoom out. Every ancient culture has a story of a great flood or a global cataclysm. The Bible, the Sumerians, the Maya, the Hopi, the Greeks, the Hindus, they all talk about a world-ending flood followed by a rebirth. Hancock connects these myths to a real event, the Younger Dryas Impact Hypothesis. Around 12,800 years ago, a sudden global cooling likely caused by a comet impact or a series of them. Mainstream science is now catching up to this idea. Hancock laid the groundwork for it over 25 years ago. So the myths are real, in the sense that we know people talked about them. and ice core data supports a sudden global disruption. So when people say Hancock is being quote unquote debunked, ask yourself, what's actually being debunked? So at this point, you're probably thinking, okay, weird ruins, weird stones, weird erosion, what's the point of all this? Why does this matter? Well, here's why this is a big deal. If even one of these sites, just one, is older or more advanced than we've been told, then the entire timeline of human history isn't just a little off. It's completely wrong. We're talking about a potential eraser of an entire chapter of civilization, one that came before everything we currently think of as the beginning. And when someone like Graham Hancock steps outside the lines and says, hey, what about this? What if the story we're telling isn't the whole story? He gets labeled as dangerous. But here's the truth. Asking questions is not dangerous. What's dangerous is a culture that punishes curiosity, a system that treats open-minded inquiry as a threat. Whether you agree with Hancock or not, whether you think there was a lost civilization or just some outlier sites, one thing is obvious. There are questions worth asking here. So what exactly is Hancock proposing? In simple terms, he believes there was an advanced civilization that existed over 12,000 years ago, before the end of the last ice age. This civilization may not have had iPhones or jet engines, but it had deep knowledge of the stars, advanced engineering, and possibly a spiritual or symbolic system that influenced cultures all over the world. Then came the catastrophe, something like a comet impact, massive flooding, or global seismic activity. The survivors didn't rebuild, they scattered. They passed their knowledge down to hunter-gatherers, who slowly integrated it into what would later become Mesopotamia, Egypt, the Indus Valley, and so on. Over time, the memory of that lost world faded, surviving only in myths, sacred texts, and megalithic structures no one can quite explain. And that brings us to the part where things get even weirder. And this is kind of my take on the whole thing. Look, if you followed Hancock's work, or any ancient astronaut theory, really, you've probably asked the same question I have. What if the quote-unquote advanced civilization wasn't even human? Hancock doesn't go fully into aliens, but he leaves the door wide open. He talks about the civilizers. Figures like Jehudi, or more commonly known as Thoth, Viracocha, Quetzalcoatl, mythical beings who show up after the cataclysm and teach agriculture, astronomy, and building techniques. Sound familiar? That's straight up Anunnaki lore. The Sumerians wrote about sky beings descending to Earth, engineering humanity, teaching knowledge, and ruling over cities. Mainstream archaeologists brush this off as mythology. But if Hancock's right, that a global reset happened, and something or someone rebooted civilization afterward, why not consider that the Anunnaki myth isn't pure fantasy? I'm not saying that they were aliens with spaceships and laser tools, but I'm not saying that either. Whether you lean toward Graham Hancock's theory of a lost Ice Age civilization, or you think there's truth buried in the Anunnaki myths, or you just think something doesn't feel right about the whole official story, then good. Because asking questions is where the real discovery begins. And anyone who tells you not to look closer probably has something to lose if you do. So keep digging, keep questioning, and don't let some YouTuber who calls himself professor tell you to stop thinking for yourself. Drop a comment below. Do you think Hancock is onto something? Do you think the Anunnaki were real? Or do you think this is all just ancient humans being way smarter than we give them credit for? Whether you believe, let's actually talk about it, and skip all the insults and name calling. Because the truth, it's buried, and it's not going to dig itself up, and there's still a lot of questions to be answered. Thanks for watching, guys. I just want to give a disclaimer. I am not an archaeologist. I am not a historian. I wouldn't even consider myself an expert on any topic. I'm simply just a dude who finds this stuff cool. And I gotta admit, I'm a huge fan of Graham Hancock. I think his theories are fun, and honestly, I think unless if you have a time machine, you can't really disprove any of this stuff. And that goes both ways. So if what I'm saying bothers you, just take it somewhere else. There's plenty of other YouTube videos out there that cover these topics. And I gotta say, this whole discussion has gotten so volatile, like, people are losing their minds over this. And I think for a good reason, too, because I honestly think most of it is based off of speculation and assumptions. And like I said, unless if you can actually put yourself in that period of time, I think that's all we're gonna ever have. And yeah, I know, the Anunnaki and the alien stuff, it is far-fetched, but I just think it's really cool, and that's just the honest-to-God truth. And seriously, my intention is not to attack anybody, but I'm just not a big fan of Professor Dave. I think the guy is super toxic, and you don't have to believe me, just go look for yourself. His videos are really nasty, a lot of name calling, and I don't want that here. So keep all that stuff out of the comments. If you want to be nasty, go to his videos because he definitely condones it. Anyway, if you watched to the end, I really appreciate it, and I'll see you guys on the next one.